kicking ball games arose independently multiple times across multiple cultures. FANDOM and Ebenezer were Greek ball games. An image of an Ebenezer player depicted in low relief in a stele of current 375 through 400 BC/BCE in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens appears on the UEFA European Championship trophy. Athanasius, writing in 228 AD/CE, mentions the Roman ball game heptastum. FANDOM, Ebenezer and heptastum were played involving hands and violence. They all appear to have resembled rugby football, wrestling and volleyball more than what is recognizable as modern football. As with pre-codified mod football, the antecedent of all modern football codes, these three games involved more handling the ball than kicking it.
The Mandarin Chinese competitive game Suchu resembles modern association football. Suchu players could use any part of the body apart from hands, and the intent was to kick a ball through an opening into a net. During the Han Dynasty from 206 BC/BCE to 220 AD/CE, Suchu games were standardized and rules were established. Other East Asian games included Kemuri in Japan and Chukguk in Korea, both influenced by Suchu. Kemuri originated after the year 600 during the Asuka period. It was a ceremonial rather than a competitive game, and involved the kicking of a meri, a ball made of animal skin. In North America, Pasacagahala was a ball game played by the Algonquians. It was described as almost identical to the kind of folk football being played in Europe at the same time, in which the ball was kicked through goals.
Association football in itself does not have a classical history. Notwithstanding any similarities to other ball games played around the world, SIFA has described that no historical connection exists with any game played in antiquity outside Europe. The history of football in England dates back to at least the 8th century. The modern rules of association football are based on the mid-19th century efforts to standardize the widely varying forms of football played in the public schools of England.
The Cambridge Rules, first drawn up at the University of Cambridge in 1848, were particularly influential in the development of subsequent codes, including association football. The Cambridge Rules were written at Trinity College, Cambridge, at a meeting attended by representatives from Eton, Harrow, Rugby, Winchester and Shrewsbury schools. They were not universally adopted. During the 1850s era, many clubs unconnected to schools or universities were formed throughout the English-speaking world to play various forms of football. Some came up with their own distinct codes of rules, most notably the Sheffield Football Club, formed by former public school pupils in 1857, which led to the formation of a Sheffield and Hallamshire County Football Association in 1867. In 1862, John Charles Thring of Uppingham School also devised an influential set of rules.
These ongoing efforts contributed to the formation of the Football Association, or the FA for short, in 1863, which first met on the morning of Monday, October 26, 1863 at the Freemasons Tavern in Great Queen Street, London. The only school to be represented on this occasion was Charterhouse. The Freemasons Tavern was the setting for 5 more meetings of the FA between October and December 1863. The English FA eventually issued the first comprehensive set of rules named Laws of the Game, forming modern football. At the final meeting, the first FA treasurer, the representative from Blackheath FC, withdrew his club from the FA over the removal of 2 draft rules at the previous meeting. The first allowed for running with the ball in hand, the second for obstructing such a run by hacking, kicking an opponent in the shins, tripping and holding. Other English rugby clubs followed this lead and did not join the FA, and instead in 1871 formed the Rugby Football Union. The 11 remaining clubs, under the charge of Ebenezer Cobb Morley, went on to ratify the original 13 laws of the game. These rules included handling of the ball by marks and the lack of a crossbar, rules which made it remarkably similar to Victorian rules football being developed at that time in Australia. The Sheffield FA played by its own rules until the 1870s era, with the FA absorbing some of its rules until there was little difference between the games.
The world's oldest football competition is the FA Cup, which was founded by the footballer and cricketer Chuck Bill Alcock and had been contested by English teams since 1872. The first official international football match also took place in 1872 between Scotland and England in Glasgow. Again, at the instigation of Alcock, England is also home to the world's first football league, which was founded in Birmingham in 1888 by Aston Villa director Bill MacGregor. The original format contained 12 clubs from the Midlands and Northern England.
The laws of the game are determined by the International Football Association Board, or the IFAB for short. The board was formed in 1886 after a meeting in Manchester of the Football Association, the Scottish Football Association, the Football Association of Wales, and the Irish Football Association, FIFA. The international football body was formed in Paris in 1904 and declared that they would adhere to the laws of the game of the Football Association. The growing popularity of the international game led to the admittance of FIFA representatives to the IFAB in 1918. The board consists of 4 representatives from FIFA and 1 representative from each of the 4 British associations.
For most of the 20th century, Europe and South America were the dominant regions in association football. The FIFA World Cup, inaugurated in 1930, became the main stage for players of both continents to show their worth and the strength of their national teams. In the second half of the century, the European Cup and the Copa Libertadores were created, and the champions of these 2 club competitions would contest the Intercontinental Cup to prove which team was the best in the world.
In the 21st century, South America has continued to produce some of the best footballers in the world, but its clubs have fallen behind the still dominant European clubs, which often sign the best players from Latin America and elsewhere. Meanwhile, football has improved in Africa, Asia and North America, and nowadays, these regions are at least on equal grounds with South America in club football, although countries in the Caribbean and Oceania regions, all except for Australia, have yet to make a mark in international football when it comes to national teams. However, Europeans and South Americans continue to dominate the FIFA World Cup, as no team from any other region has managed to even reach the final.
Football is played at a professional level all over the world. Millions of people regularly go to football stadiums to follow their favorite teams, while billions more watch the game on television or on the internet. A very large number of people also play football at an amateur level. According to a survey conducted by FIFA published in 2001, over 240 million people from more than 200 countries regularly play football. Football has the highest global television audience in sport.
In many parts of the world, football evokes great passions and plays an important role in the life of individual fans, local communities, and even nations. Ryszard Kapuściński says that Europeans who are polite, modest, or humble fall easily into rage when playing or watching football games. The Ivory Coast national football team helped secure a truce to the nation's civil war in 2006, and it helped further reduce tensions between government and rebel forces in 2007 by playing a match in the rebel capital of Bouaké, an occasion that brought both armies together peacefully for the first time. By contrast, football is widely considered to have been the final proximate cause for the football war in June 1969 between El Salvador and Honduras. The sport also exacerbated tensions at the beginning of the Croatian War of Independence of the 1990s, when a match between Dinamo Zagreb and Red Star Belgrade degenerated into rioting in May 1990.
Women's Association football has historically seen opposition, with national associations severely curbing its development and several outlawing it completely. Restrictions started to be reduced in the 1970s era, and the first official Women's World Cup was the 1991 FIFA Women's World Cup in China, with only 12 teams from the respective 6 confederations. By the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup in France, this had increased to 24 national teams, and a record-breaking 1,112,000,000 plus viewers watched the competition. Women may have been playing football for as long as the game has existed. Evidence shows that a similar ancient game to Chu was played by women during the Han Dynasty, 25 to 220. as female figures are depicted in frescoes of the period playing Tutu. There are also reports of annual football matches played by women in Midlothian, Scotland, during the 1790s era.
Association football, the modern game, has documented early involvement of women. In 1863, football governing bodies introduced standardized rules to prohibit violence on the pitch, making it more socially acceptable for women to play. The first match recorded by the Scottish Football Association took place in 1892 in Glasgow, in England. The first recorded game of football between women took place in 1895. Women's football has traditionally been associated with charity games and physical exercise, particularly in the United Kingdom.
The best documented early European team was founded by activist Nettie Honeyball in England in 1894. It was named the British Ladies Football Club. Honeyball is quoted as, "I founded the association late last year, with the fixed resolve of proving to the world that women are not the ornamental and useless creatures men have pictured. I must confess, my convictions on all matters where the sexes are so widely divided are all on the side of emancipation, and I look forward to the time when ladies may sit in Parliament and have a voice in the direction of affairs, especially those which concern them most." Honeyball and those like her paved the way for women's football. However, the women's game was frowned upon by the British football associations and continued without their support. It has been suggested that this was motivated by a perceived threat to the masculinity of the game.
Women's football became popular on a large scale at the time of the First World War, when female employment in heavy industry spurred the growth of the game, much as it had done for men 50 years, or 5 decades earlier. The most successful team of the era was Dick Kerr Ladies FC of Preston, England. The team played in one of the first women's international matches against a French 11 team in 1920, and also made up most of the England team against a Scottish Ladies 11 in the same year, winning 22-0.
Despite being more popular than some men's football events, with one match seeing a 53,000-strong crowd in 1920, women's football in England suffered a blow in 1921 when the Football Association outlawed the playing of the game on association members' pitches, stating that the game of football is quite unsuitable for females and should not be encouraged. Players and football writers have argued that this ban was, in fact, due to envy of the large crowds that women's matches attracted, and because the FA had no control over the money made from the women's game. The FA ban led to the formation of the short-lived English Ladies Football Association and play moved to rugby grounds.
Association football continued to be played by women since the time of the first recorded women's games in the late 19th century. In December 1969, the Women's Football Association was formed in England, and in 1971, the Union of European Football Associations, or the UEFA members for short, has now voted to officially recognize women's football. Also in 1971, the Football Association rescinded the ban that prohibited women from playing on association members' pitches. In the late 1960s era, and early 1970s era, women's association football was organized in the United Kingdom, eventually becoming the most prominent team sport for British women. Women's football also faced bans in several other countries, notably in Brazil from 1941 to 1979, in France from 1941 to 1970, and in Germany from 1955 to 1970.
Women's football still faces many struggles, but its worldwide growth has seen major competitions being launched at both the national and international levels, mirroring the men's competitions. The FIFA Women's World Cup was inaugurated in 1991 and has been held every 4 years since. While women's football has been an Olympic event since 1996, North America is the dominant region in women's football, with the United States of America winning most FIFA Women's World Cups and Olympic tournaments. Europe and Asia come second and third in terms of international success, and the women's game has been improving in South America.
In conclusion, number 1, The association football, more commonly known as football or soccer, is a team sport played between two teams of 11 players each, who primarily use their feet to propel a ball around a rectangular field called a pitch. The objective of the game is to score more goals than the opposing team by moving the ball beyond the goal line into a rectangular frame goal defended by the opposing team. Traditionally, the game has been played over two halves in the next 45 minutes. For a total match time of 90 minutes, with an estimated 250 million players active in over 200 countries and territories. It is the world's most popular sport.
Conclusion number 2. The game of association football is played in accordance with the laws of the game, a set of rules that has been in effect since 1863 and maintained by the IFAB. Since 1886, the game is played with a football that is 68 to 70 centimeters, 27 to 28 inches circumference. The two teams compete to get the ball into the other team's goal between the posts and under the bar, thereby scoring a goal. When the ball is in play, the players mainly use their feet, but may use any other part of their body, except for their hands or arms, to control, strike, or pass the ball. Only the goalkeepers may use their hands and arms, and only then within the penalty area. The team that has scored more goals at the end of the game is the winner. Depending on the format of the competition, an equal number of goals scored may result in a draw being declared, or the game goes into extra time or a penalty shootout.
And finally, conclusion number 3. Internationally, the association football is governed by the FIFE. Under the FIFE, there are 6 continental confederations: the Asian Football Confederation, the Confederation of African Football, the Confederation of North, Central America and Caribbean Association Football, the South American Football Confederation, the Oceania Football Confederation, and the Union of European Football Associations. Of these confederations, the CONMEBOL is the oldest one, being founded in 1916. National associations, for an example with either the Football Association or the Japan Football Association, are responsible for managing the game in their own countries both professionally and at an amateur level, and coordinating competitions in accordance with the laws of the game. The most senior and prestigious international competitions are the FIFE World Cup and the FIFE Women's World Cup. The Men's World Cup is the most viewed sporting event in the world, surpassing the Olympic Games. The two most prestigious competitions in European club football are the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA Women's Champions League, which attract an extensive television audience throughout the world. Since 2009, the final of the men's tournament has been the most watched annual sporting event in the world.
And that is it for the 78th commentary blog. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the 78th.